Hi, welcome to Redwood Coast Studio. My name's Eric Morse. We are here in lovely Sonoma County. I'm here with my good friend Buzzy Martin. What we do on this program, it's a video series and a podcast, and we meet really interesting people that are doing cool things for the world, and we find out a little bit about some current events and news and examine what's going on and try and explain it from a common sense perspective and see what we can do to make things better. Buzzy Martin?
Yes, sir. Hey, how you doing, my friend?
Pretty good. Thanks for joining us here today.
I'm honored to be here. Very humbled to talk to your audience about what's going on in my life.
Okay, so I have known Buzzy for 18 years.
Is it?
Yeah, it was.
Or is?
Yeah, it's been 18 years, and Buzzy's somewhat of a local hero and celebrity here in Sebastopol and Sonoma County and around the Bay Area, and maybe soon to be more even of a national celebrity. Buzzy, international celebrity, going to Beverly Hills next week. There's a new movie out about Buzzy. Buzzy wrote a book called Don't Shoot, I'm the Guitar Man. It was made into a feature film. It's appearing at film festivals around the country and around the world, winning awards. Buzzy, tell us a little bit about what the book and the movie are about.
Well, you know, for many years I had the opportunity to be working with at-risk kids here in Sonoma County. And at-risk at that point, when I started out, was a lot different than what at-risk is now. But in generally, it's kids that are disfranchised, kids that have fallen through the cracks, go to non-mainstream schools like juvenile hall, probation camp, court community schools, clean and sober schools, and I would teach them the gift of music. And that was going extremely great. And then one day I had the opportunity to go and work in San Quentin State Prison for 12 weeks, which turned into 3.5 years. I was smart enough to keep an audio tape going the whole time. And with that, I wrote this book. But I work with a high number of kids here in Sonoma County. I'm sure it's like this all over the country, where they're as young as 8, and the badge of honor is to go to prison.
Yeah.
And so I felt that for me, you know, personally going to San Quentin and teaching the gift of music, I was going to try to get either a song or some kind of story that I could talk to these kids about and try to change their minds or unteach and unlearn them what they've been taught in order to really get them to understand that going to prison is not a cool thing.
Yeah,
so that's what I deal with. And so that's what my book, the movie, my songs. I'm really an advocate. I'm not really anything other than an advocate to try to help kids change their minds and not want to go to prison.
Yeah, cool. And you work with some adults too?
I work with a lot of adults. Absolutely.
You have in the past?
I still do.
Okay.
But my thrust or my impetus in life is to really, work in juvenile
prevent
halls.
The problem before it occurs.
Absolutely, because there's a lot of money, as we know. I don't know how political you want to get here, but, Jeffrey Beauregard Sessions III, our Attorney General, also has, he has interest and shares with CCA, which is Corrections Corporation of America, which is a private for-profit prison. So he's kind of like double dipping. You can't, it's not really cool what he's doing.
Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about, Buzzy I think is going to be with us for 2 episodes. In the first one, we're going to talk about the prison culture of America and the prison industrial complex. And then we're going to get into Buzzy's experience with working with at-risk youth, which is where I first met Buzzy. I was a teacher at a court and community school, working with kids who had been expelled from their normal school, and they went to a court and community school program.
At-risk kids.
At-risk kids, and they were
Throwaway
at risk
kids.
of
you start talking about all these names, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's tons of names of what you would call juvenile delinquents.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
It's crazy.
Been around for a long time. That's probably what you and I were when we were kids.
Yeah. So a little bit about the current prison system as it exists today. And I think my impetus for doing this episode was a couple weeks ago. I watched an award-winning documentary from, I believe, last year, 2017, called 13th. Many of you may have seen it. I had heard about it for several months. I know my son watched it in his high school social studies class. 13th is an award-winning documentary about the 13th Amendment, which, if you remember from your education days, outlawed slavery, but there's a little known phrase in the 13th Amendment that says involuntary servitude and slavery shall be prohibited except as punishment for a crime. And so the movie really takes a long look at the prison industrial system in America. And when you attach the word industrial to something like the military industrial complex,
right,
it means that there's a group of people making a whole lot of money off of something that, you know, in Dwight Eisenhower's case with the military industrial complex, he thought they shouldn't be making money off of. And now you've got people like, you know, maybe Jeff Sessions and others.
A lot of people. I mean, when you
making
start
a
going
lot of money off of
absolutely
increasing the prison population. And
right.
should it be that way?
Well, it's on the New York Stock Exchange.
Yeah.
When you start...
$80 billion a year we spend.
I mean, when you start looking at this, how many people in prison? And I've heard between
2.3 million
to 2.5. I mean,
okay,
you look at that,
and it could have changed since last week.
And you start looking at the whole picture of how it affects the families, the neighborhoods, the communities.
Yeah. So that is the first thing I wanted to talk about, actually, is what are the auxiliary costs? Because, you know, you hear there's a couple numbers you hear a lot. There's 2.3 million people in prison. Well, that's only 1% of the population. Big deal. Well, number one, that is the highest rate of incarceration of any nation on earth and any nation in history. In the 8,000 years of recorded human history, no country anywhere ever has had a higher percentage of its people in prison than the United States in 2018.
So let me give you a number then.
Yeah.
So what's it cost you a year to live by yourself? Because I'll tell you, it costs about $67,000 to $85,000 a year for an inmate.
Okay.
And you think to yourself, I could live great for $85,000 a year,
yeah.
right?
What else could we do with that $80,000 a year?
And why is it
person?
so expensive?
Yeah.
Well, you want to tell your audience or want me to tell you?
No, go ahead.
We
Why?
could be a comedy team.
I know.
Probably
why is it so expensive? It is.
Well, you're paying the officers because you have these officers
that
are all about, and obviously if your listeners really go Google this, they're the highest, most powerful union in the country, are the officers union.
Yeah, correctional officers.
Exactly, and so that's why it costs so much money, where you have these guys come in and you always have two officers or whatever going on, and the benefits are huge. That's why it costs so much money to incarcerate people too.
And I mean, in the old days, that's true. In the old days, it was a public thing, and nowadays, anytime you privatize anything, you create an incentive to spend more taxpayer dollars on that thing because the people want to spend more. We spend $80 billion a year right now. That has gone up fourfold since 1980, and that has increased 3 times as fast as education spending.
Well, that's because...
Triple the rate of increase.
And that's because they've found a gold mine in incarcerating people. It goes back to the slavery.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't change much, really. You know, they see who owns the prisons, who maintains the prisons, you know, how many people are going out and in. When you have this pipeline from, you know, school to prison, you know, I mean, come on.
Yeah. Exactly.
It really gets stupid then, but it's have the politicians stepping in. It just, it's
and
money.
It really does hurt the community. You were saying that earlier, and that's one of the things that's at the top of the list. I wanted to talk about the unknown things that we don't really pay much attention to. The fact that 1 in 50 families has someone in prison. 1 in 28 women has either their love partner or their father or their son in prison, and 1 in 4 children has an immediate family member.
And
in
is
prison.
that and where locations are you talking about? Because when you get into like very poor communities, I'm sure that number shrinks heavily.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah. Sure.
Big time.
There's a 7 times greater dropout rate from high school in impoverished areas as there are. In
well,
the
there's no hope in most of these communities where you know there's very few jobs, very few community interaction. You know, where are no mentors for these kids?
Yep.
And so what happens is these guys just go to the streets because, you know, at that point it's the thug mentality.
Yeah.
And they're going to just go and get what they can get on the streets because there's no hope of getting a job. There are no jobs.
So tell us a little bit about what it was like in San Quentin, and not just describing, I'm not just trying to be a voyeur here, but what were some of your thoughts about what you would have done differently with the prison system? You were in there for 3.5, not an inmate, but 3.5 years.
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, I went
home, folks. I went home every night. That's so when he says, well, you were in, that's true, I was in, but I went home every night.
How many days a week were you there?
Well, the first year and a half, I went in once a week. The second year and a half, I go in twice a week.
Okay.
So the first was like Tuesdays, and then it was Tuesdays and Wednesdays.
Okay.
And then it would split up different parts of the prison where I'd go.
And what kind of people were you working with?
See, that's a good question. They're called humans.
Okay. Yeah.
That's pretty good, huh?
Yeah.
No, they're humans. I mean,
that's great. Yeah.
You know, it's the same thing as, I mean, you went to juvenile hall and worked with some of the kids there.
Yep.
We're just people. And that's where, you know, I really try to make people understand that they're just adults that were abused as kids.
Okay.
And so, you know, to answer your question a little bit more seriously, they're guys that I knew had a really rough time and did some really terrible things in order to get where they were. But they were still human beings. And like going to juvenile hall, I never asked any of these guys, like I didn't ask the boys and girls in juvenile hall, what got them there. Okay. I was there to teach them how to play music. And for me, the hard part was going from, I guess, you know, the beginning until I get to the room where I was at. Because there was a lot of catcalling going on, depending on where I was in the prisons and stuff.
Okay.
But you know, to answer your question, they were just humans. You know, they just look like people.
Yeah.
You know, my feeling is, and it has been and always will be, these are somebody's son, husband, brother, cousin. And they're humans, and we got to treat them that way. I almost feel like sometimes we put more money into animals and love into animals' rights than we do human rights.
I think that's true in a lot of areas in the world, not just the prison system.
No. But
you're right.
In a lot of the areas in the world, we just
absolutely
we treat animals better than we do humans, and I don't know why that is.
Yeah. So I think it's pretty unanimously agreed, or close to unanimous anyway, that we do have a problem in that prison populations are increasing every single year, and often every year even the rate of increase is going up, which leads to an exponential kind of thing.
But the crime by statistics seems to be going down.
Yeah.
So figure that one out. And this is where you and I talk, and your audience can go a big how does that work? That, you know, crime's going down, but and we could Google this. But if I'm not mistaken, since 1982, there has only been one junior college built in California and 22 prisons.
Yeah.
So, I mean, why?
There are 13 or 1,700 state prisons in the United States. It seems like an awful lot.
And you go to Norway or Germany or, you know, Amsterdam, and they're letting people out of prison because it's different.
Yeah.
They treat it different. There's more, you know, education in prison.
Sure. Well, I want to get to that in a minute, but I want to just finish diagnosing the problem here. So we're spending more money on prisons. We are putting more people in prison
of color.
Every time, of color especially. Yes,
and
hugely disproportionate number of people of color.
The ones that are
prisoners.
white, and not to interrupt you and stuff.
It's okay.
I find that, you know, the poor whites.
Yeah.
You know, along with everybody else,
Yeah.
into the system they go.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're not putting people in from Beverly Hills.
No, I hear. So I did a lot of research for this episode. I'm not going to have time to get nearly into the number of fascinating statistics, but if it interests you at all, do a little research. Take a couple hours and just, you know, sit at your computer with Google, and you'll find out things like, yes, it is basically, if you have money, you're not going to prison for the most part. Of course, there are exceptions to that.
Well, you're going to plea bargain. You're going to get a great attorney.
Only 1% of people who are in prison actually had a trial before a jury and were convicted of that crime.
Well, that's right.
1%.
Right.
The other 99% plea bargained guilty. And the fact that most of them plea bargained guilty is because they couldn't afford an attorney who would have made a better plea bargain and gotten them out of the system. And it is just the level at which money can buy you a get out of jail free card is just staggering.
And believe it or not, folks, there are quotas out there.
Yeah.
I mean, you build these prisons,
you
have to fill them up.
Because now what we're finding is that state governments are being sued by the Corrections Corporation of America, now, which is now known as Civic Corps. and the GEO Group is the second biggest private prison contractor. They sign contracts with states, and if the states don't provide enough prisoners, the corporation can sue the state.
Right.
And so, of course, it just makes this incentive, more prisoners. Another thing I found out was that during the 80s and the big Ronald Reagan get tough on crime era, and even before that with Richard Nixon's big law and order candidacy, one thing that happened wasn't just the number of people sent to prison increased, but their sentence lengths were increased by 3, 4, and 5 times. What used to be a 2 to 3 to 5 year sentence became all of a sudden a 10 to 15 to 20 to 30 year sentence. And studies show, no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on, extended prison lengths sentences do not provide a deterrent. They do not provide rehabilitation. They do not keep the public any safer whatsoever. When you're talking especially about long prison sentences for non-violent crimes.
It's all about money.
It's all about money.
I mean, when I was working in San Quentin, it says in my book, 85% of the guys that I worked with there were there for non-violent drug, alcohol, mental health crimes. They didn't do anything to anybody.
Yeah.
You know, and we have this thing, again, getting back to Jeff Sessions, about the whole, if you smoke pot, you're a bad person, you should go to prison.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
So, you know, it's just gotten to be a big money monster is what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And we're locking people up, which goes back to basically the slavery again.
Yeah.
To where you're putting people in prison really for the color of their skin.
Yeah.
And where's that going to lead us?
So what are we going to do about this? The movie 13th, I can't recommend it enough. Fascinating for its look across the political spectrum. Newt Gingrich was a big one interviewed. Of course, Newt Gingrich came to power in 1994 when the Republicans swept Congress in a backlash to the Clintons being elected.
Oh, yeah.
And they really moved the Clintons to the right. And Bill and Hillary both, and a lot of Democrats, Al Gore, sort of became, we're going to out tough on crime the Republicans, you know what I mean? So Democrats, Republicans alike agree that we messed up. We sort of like just flexed our muscles as hard as we could to show America that we were keeping them safe from criminals, and what we really did screwed everything up. Even to hear Newt Gingrich talk about how unfair they made the criminal justice system for people of color and for criminals in general. They know they made a mistake.
Well, and they're out of touch.
So what can we do about the prison system today? We're going to talk a little about kids in the next week's episode. But what can we do?
Are we going to a commercial break? You get commercial breaks with this?
Well, you want to sing a song?
Well, that wasn't a commercial break, but I'm saying...
We're not going to a commercial break, no.
Wow, this is like live TV,
This is live TV, yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Well, we'll continue talking. I'll do it. You're the host.
So what are your ideas about how we can make the prison system better without getting too much into the education system? Because we're going to talk about that next time.
That's pretty messed up. It's so it's so messy now. Man, it's going to take a long time. Yeah. The oversight thing is a big deal. Going and voting people in or voting people out of office. My books have and a lot of criminal justice programs and junior colleges. So I try to talk to the kids about having them, whether they're going to become future cops or probation officers, to really be involved with who they're trying to work with. Excuse me. So my feeling is just to try to really get more involved. I mean, that's all we're going to really be able to do is to try to change.
Change the policies.
Yes.
And there are policies changes being thought about and being talked about. I read that right now Jeff Sessions and Jared Kushner are really on the outs with each other because Jared Kushner wants sort of a more modern, progressive, rehabilitation-minded approach, and Jeff Sessions, of course, wants a more punishment, harsh, draconian style approach.
Well, but this goes back to waterboarding and stuff too.
Yeah.
I mean, waterboarding is great unless you're doing it yourself.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
I mean,
sure.
Everybody has all this stuff that you should be doing, and it's like, it goes back to the Rango thing. A little bit more love would probably help, but everybody is so determined to make money off of stuff.
Yeah.
That's why we have such a bad time with incarceration, because there's so much money to make.
How much rehabilitation was going on in San Quentin when you were there?
Well, my program was rehabilitation, so that was a great thing to have music.
Yep.
They have, they have arts. They have at least when I was doing it, and hopefully they still do. There were programs where you could go in and learn trades, get your GED, obviously art.
Yep.
I know they have a dog program. I don't know if that's in San Quentin, but they do have some dog programs in prisons. I was reading about they have home hospice going on in some prisons where the inmates themselves become the
hospice givers.
The hospice givers.
Okay.
So,
but was there job training and education and counseling?
Absolutely.
There is?
Oh, there is.
There was. Okay.
But it depends if you want to take it or not.
Now, how long ago were you working in San Quentin?
My last day was January 31st of 2001.
Okay.
So that was almost 17 years ago.
Do you have any idea how much the rehabilitation programs have changed since then? Speaking of education, counseling, job training.
No, and no.
They've been reduced drastically.
Yeah, I bet they were. And I do know that in my time, as far as the exercising goes, has stopped.
Yeah.
Cigarettes had stopped, which now they're black marketing cigarettes.
Yeah.
So, it's just such an abnormal place to be in.
I bet. Do you think rehabilitation works? Education and counseling?
I think it works.
It definitely does.
If you're willing to have it in these places, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have it in the places, it's not going to work.
No. But studies show it definitely works. Shorter sentences work. A kinder, more benevolent approach. More family visits. More food, visits.
Food.
Better food. Better treatment. More exercise. All of that studies show conclusively reduce reoffending, recidivism, law-abiding status once you're released from prison, and then they make the communities better, they make the families better, things like that.
Well, it's good human beings.
Yeah.
And if we taught that to again going back to children, teaching them how to be good people.
Cool.
And that really is what it really comes down to. Is education and teaching how to be a good person, because some kids don't know.
Yeah.
As you know, being a teacher when I met you,
yeah.
Some of these kids really don't know.
Yeah.
They've never had the experience of shaking somebody's hand or being trusted or saying what a great job you've done or you look good today or.
Okay. Do you want to play us a song?
I'd like to.
Okay, I'd love to hear it.
Does your audience want to hear something?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, let's hear something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
I was saying you've made quite a career for yourself and making more of one out of a singing-songwriting practice that really addresses some of these.
Yeah, pretty heavy on some of these issues that I write about, but I think it's real important that
I think it is
that we address these issues, and if I can do it through music, well, so be it, because I am a musician first and author second.
Yeah, what's the song called?
I thought I'd do a song called Prison Town, USA, because we've been talking about prison towns and how they pop up because the factories close down, then they build these prisons, and then it becomes private for profit, and then you start intermingling, the officers' families with the inmates' families that come to live there so they can be next to their
interesting
husband and stuff.
So many facets of this that we, the general population, do not think about like that.
Right. Well, it doesn't even cross your mind.
That's never crossed my mind.
Right. We've never talked about the phone calls, how much it costs.
Yeah.
Because that's a whole other bag in itself.
The travel, the expenses on the families who are probably poor to begin with, and they have to get up at 4 a.m. and drive 300 miles to visit their son for 2 hours,
or husband,
and then
they
have to take 2 days off work, and they have to get a hotel, and they have to fill up with gas, and they can't afford any of that.
None of it.
Yeah.
And then sometimes they move them out state after state, so that way they can control them.
Yeah.
And their families aren't going to come around, which is really messed up.
It's really messed up. And of course it makes the problem worse.
It exacerbates the whole thing. And then you have the inmate getting upset, and you have more infractions and more points on them, and then they have more time. And
then Buzzy's going gray from this.
You had to bring that up, huh? See, that wasn't funny at all, folks. So now all my friends are gonna go, that's right. Now he looks gray, and
all right.
It looks like Jerry Garcia is gonna say that one next too. He was thinking it.
That's what you're doing.
Here we go.
Days.
Do a song called "Prison Town, USA," because since we've been talking about private for-profit prisons in the whole
Yeah.
deal. So it goes like this. Prison town, mass incarceration, factory shut down, smell the blood money, son. Families starve, no way to feed the baby. Only choice is to steal with a gun. Change has come, death all around here. Inmates stench there, looking for a fight. Jailhouse town, high in unemployment. Prison got a job, one hell of a life in prison town, USA. Supermax government slaves, beat, stab, and abuse. The rule is there are no rules in prison town, USA. Prison town, USA. Inmates for sale, rotting in the cages, banking on private prison detainees. Poverty inmates, it's how to make the money. Detention guards, prison company. Prison town, USA. Prison town, USA. Locked up, shut down, crime on the run. Inmates life preyed and preyed upon. Gun tower shadows, can't walk guards. Prison population in your backyard. Prison town, USA. Supermax government slaves. Beat, stab, and abuse. The rule is there are no rules in prison town, USA. Prison town, USA. Prison town, USA. Prison town, USA.
That's fantastic.
Thanks,
Fantastic, yeah. Your songs are great. They illustrate and illuminate so many factors and facets of this situation that we don't ever really think about. The cost to the families involved, the phone calls, the travel, the hotels they've got to get to visit. They lock these people up sometimes in prisons 300, 400, 500, 900, 1,100 miles from their families.
Oh, easy. One thing we didn't touch about was the whole solitary confinement.
Yeah.
To where even the Juvenile Convention says that no more than 72 hours, and we have people like in months.
Yeah.
So, we really got to make some changes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Programs like this is really good because you're opening people's minds up to talk about it.
Yeah, so make the changes. There are people in our government at the state level, especially the federal level. There's all sorts of programs that are there to help rehabilitate prisoners and to keep adults out of prison if possible. So voice your support for those programs and contact your legislators and your county government, even anybody you can, and let them know that you feel that we need to take a more humane and common sense approach to, turning these people from prisoners into good members of society.
Absolutely, community, and for me, it just goes back again with the kids. If we, volunteer at your juvenile halls, boys and girls clubs, become a mentor, whatever the case may be, get involved. I mean, that's with anything, just get involved.
Okay. And join us next week. We're going to talk more about that. And find us on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, and go to buzzymartin.com and check out his book, Don't Shoot, I'm the Guitar Man, and look for his movie,
Guitar Man.
Okay.
Coming to a town near you soon.
Yeah, winning all sorts of awards. And good luck in Hollywood next week.
Yeah, Beverly Hills, here we come.
Okay. Redwood Coast Studio, I'm Eric Morse. See you guys later.
Peace.